Hello, my name is Laurel Collins. I'm the Member of Parliament for Victoria. And I want to start off by thanking the survivors, the organizations, the people who support people impacted by intimate partner violence, as well as MP Randall Garrison for tabling this bill in previous parliaments. Coercive control is an insidious and often ignored element of intimate partner violence. It is a way in which partners are controlled, are prevented from leaving. Examples of coercive control include taking a partner's keys, denying them access to their own bank accounts, to their credit cards. It includes limiting what they can eat and the things that they can wear. And other countries like the UK, Scotland, have legislation that prevent and criminalize this kind of behavior. After the UK passed their law on criminalizing coercive control, calls for support went up by 31%. It meant that survivors, victims of domestic abuse knew that they could reach out for support. They've also seen that the ratio of the gender ratio is about 5 to 1. This coercive control disproportionately impacts women. And so in Canada, we know that domestic violence is a severe problem, and during the pandemic, it only worsened. 25% of calls to 911 are related to intimate partner violence. And every 6 days in Canada, a woman is killed. It means that, if we don't tackle this, women are going to continue to be trapped in relationships where their independence is limited, where they are feeling the threat of violence, and it is so critical that we move forward with this piece of legislation. 2 years ago, the Justice Committee tabled a report, unanimously called on the government to address coercive and controlling behavior. But 2 years later, we still don't have a piece of legislation that will support survivors, support victims of intimate partner violence. And so, the Liberals continue to delay and disappoint when it comes to standing up for women, when it comes to ensuring women's safety. And so this is why I am putting forward this bill. We are going into second reading today, and I am calling on all members of Parliament to support this piece of legislation. For me personally, this bill holds a special place in my heart, because the first time I recognized coercive controlling behavior was when my sister showed up at my doorstep in tears. Her partner had taken her keys, he had taken her bank cards, he had tried to prevent her from leaving. Luckily, she had another set of keys, and he had her cell phone. Now, that was the first time I saw it, but over the next few years, it happened again and again and again. On average, it takes a woman 7 times to leave a domestic partnership that involves intimate partner violence. And I am grateful that my sister is free from that relationship, and she's given me permission to share her story, but that story is so common. 95% of women who experience domestic abuse report also experiencing coercive control. It is one of the biggest risk factors for femicide, even more so than physical violence. And so this piece of legislation is vitally important. Thank you so much. I'll take any questions.
Stephanie Taylor with the Canadian Press. Specifically, what would criminalizing this behavior do? I think lots of people would agree that it is toxic. It is a symptom of an abusive relationship. It can escalate, but specifically, why the need to criminalize that behavior versus what people perceive it now as, which is these are the red flags, these are the warning signs. What does criminalizing it actually achieve?
Yeah, and we've heard from organizations who support women who are experiencing intimate partner violence that criminalizing it is a crucial step. We've seen a really clear example from the UK bill that after the legislation was passed, calls for support increased. It not only gives the tools to police officers to intervene before violence happens or potentially intervene when violence isn't being reported, but it also will change the way that we think about coercive and controlling behavior. Right now, oftentimes that kind of behavior is accepted or normalized or just not talked about. And we want to both raise awareness about the fact that this kind of behavior is completely unacceptable. When a person's independence is limited, when someone is controlling every aspect of their life and preventing them from leaving a violent situation, we want to make sure that we have the tools to intervene and that survivors have the tools to get out. But, beyond that, I think we need this piece of legislation. We've heard from police officers who have been calling for this legislation because they repeatedly go back to the same households and there is nothing. When the Nova Scotia shooter took the tires off of his girlfriend's car, there's no criminal behavior there necessarily, but it is clearly a pattern. And then, years later, he killed 22 people. He forcibly restrained her. Luckily, she was able to escape and survive. But these kind of horrific stories are all too common, and we want to stop violence and we want to stop abuse before it escalates to that level.
What I understand you're calling for support at this press conference is what you're using this for from other parties. But have you had any discussions with Liberal colleagues, Conservative colleagues? And if you have, what can you tell us about kind of their support for maybe not just your private member's bill, but for legislating this, whether this is something the government kind of does on its own, which Minister Virani has said he is open to doing?
Yeah. So I sat down and talked to the previous Justice Minister and had a commitment from him that he would support this bill. I've had email correspondence with the new minister, and I'm waiting to sit down with him to have that same conversation. I do hope that he will support it as it goes forward. When the Justice Committee tabled their recommendations, there was unanimous support for this. Whenever I speak to a member of Parliament and walk them through what this legislation entails, people are on board. I've had conversations with individual MPs from every party, and we'll find out today in debate whether each of the parties will support this moving forward. But I really, I encourage all members to look at the legislation and look at the difference that it could make for women, for anyone who is experiencing intimate partner violence. And one shift, Randall Garrison tabled this bill in a previous parliament, and one addition that is in this bill that wasn't in previous bills is that we've also extended this to the time period after a relationship ends. And the reason we did that is because we've heard from organizations that time when a woman leaves an abusive relationship, when someone who is experiencing intimate partner violence leaves, is the most dangerous time. Those 6 months after a relationship ends is often when femicides occur, when violence is the most risky.
To your point about this is something that when you talk to people, you have kind of cross-partisan support. Given that, what is your analysis as to why this is not in law? That if there is cross-party support, if advocates are calling for it, if police officers think that this is a tool they can use, why do you think it hasn't happened yet?
Yeah, it's been 2 years since the Justice Committee tabled their report. We've been calling for it for longer than that, and it's disappointing that the Liberals haven't chosen to put this into legislation before this. We're going to keep pushing to get this through as quickly as possible, but they could have tabled legislation right after the Justice Committee recommended that coercive control be criminalized, but they have delayed. And we've seen a pattern of this with the Liberal government. They make, big statements in elections when it comes to supporting women. They run on being champions for women, but when it comes down to it, those are words, and what we need is action. We need action to protect women. We need action for survivors and for victims of intimate partner violence.
Okay, there's no further questions in the room at the moment. Online we have Molly Hayes. Go ahead, Molly, ask your question.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. One thing I wondered about, you mentioned, sorry, it's echoing on my end, hopefully not on yours. Um, the work that began in 2020 by Randall Garrison. And one of the concerns that I remember hearing at that time from anti violence experts and advocates was around looking to our justice system for solutions, given the track record when it comes to women who've experienced violence and the reticence to engage with that system. So I'm just wondering if anything's changed since then, sort of how you would address those concerns.
Yeah, and I think that's a really valid concern. When we look at our criminal justice system, it is unfair to marginalized communities. It's unfair to women, particularly to Indigenous women, Indigenous people as a whole, people of color. These criminal justice systems need need dramatic transformation, and ensuring that we have changes to our criminal justice system to better serve survivors is part of that work. So what we've heard from frontline organizations, and I spoke to organizations in my community, is that oftentimes marginalized women are the most impacted by coercive control. One of the kind of key ways that newcomers are impacted by coercive control is when their partner takes their immigration papers, when they take their passport. This is a particularly insidious way to control someone's life, and we need to make sure that people have the tools to report the behavior and to have action taken.
Okay, thank you so much.
More questions in the room, Lauren? Okay, no further questions. That'll conclude the press conference. Thank you.
Thank you.